have always been gold diggers, women latching onto elderly men. But we're going to be talking about the ultimate gold digger of all times. She didn't want to have to do any work at all. She wanted the good life without having to compromise by spending time in the bedroom. She figured it all out and she made it work. Got millions out of it. The only thing is she had to commit a murder to make it successful. But it all came unraveled because of a wedding photographer. Now, what's all this about? Well, this is a case I did a lot of work on, put together, and I think you're going to find it fascinating. So let's look at the facts. Well, what is our topic today? The ultimate gold digger, Rebecca Cleland case. Well, what are the facts? Well, there was a party girl. Her name at the time was Rebecca Salcedo. And she liked to go to parties, and she liked to drink and laugh and have a good time. But she didn't want to work. She just didn't like having to go to work. It wasn't fun. But she wanted it all. She wanted to have the good life without having to work for it. Well, to pick up some extra money, she would work at the swap meet on the weekends. And she was at the swap meet, and she was selling different spices like chili and some novelties, and she enjoyed that, and she earned some money, not a lot of money, but gave her a chance to meet different people, because there are a lot of people who go to swap meets who they're excited. They're thinking trash to treasures. They're going to find something at a bargain price. So she's there that day, and she's talking to customers that would come by. And there was this gentleman by the name of Bruce Cleland. He came by. He noticed that she was selling chili, spices, and he wanted to try the different blends that she had. And so they talked for some time. And then for some reason, Rebecca says to Bruce, where do you work? And he said, well, I'm an engineer at TRW out in Torrance. And she said, oh, really? She says, I'm looking for another job. I hope to find something that pays more. And he said, well, we have a lot of jobs out there at TRW. And she said, well, let me give you my resume. And she goes into her purse, pulls out a resume that she had typed up, and she handed it to him. And he looked at it and said, well, yeah, I'll see what I can do for you. Maybe there is some opening. Now, the next day that she went to work, she was working at a credit agency, and she goes to the computer and checks out Bruce Cleland as to his credit. And she found out that he had high limits and low balance. Wow, that was just intriguing to her. And when she further went into his name, found out that his parents were elderly, and they had quite a bit of property in South Pasadena. Wow. She said to her co-worker there, this is the man I'm going to marry. So that was, and who was this Bruce Cleland? Well, as we said, he worked at TRW, been there for a number of years. He wasn't married, and he lived with his parents in South Pasadena. Now, he went to school in South Pasadena, and I guess the best way to describe him is a dork. I mean, he was, as far as social skills, didn't quite fit in, but he was smart. And he went to Harvey Mugg Engineering College in Claremont, got his degree in engineering there, and then went on and got a master's degree in engineering at Stanford University. So a very bright guy, had quite a future, and he got back in contact with Rebecca, and they started dating. And he liked going to Mexican restaurants because he liked spicy food. So the two of them hit it off. They would go to this restaurant in East LA, and they would have their different Mexican dishes there and a couple of beers. Had a wonderful time. They enjoyed it. So that was the beginning of their dating relationship. And she invited him to come over to she had an apartment in Maywood, and it was behind this house. There was kind of a garage, but there was like an apartment, and that's where she lived. And she say to Bruce, she was embarrassed to have him come over there because she didn't have any furniture of any consequence. And he said, "I'll take care of that. Let me get you some furniture." And he went out and bought all brand new furniture for the living room, as well as for the 2 bedrooms that she had. So she was very pleased that she had her house now furnished. And they went out to one of the malls, and they noticed some jewelry there. And she said, "Oh, this is lovely. Gee, I wish I had something like that." And he said, "Well, fine, let's get it." And he bought all different forms of jewelry, earrings, necklaces, bracelets. Whatever her heart desired, he bought it for her. And this went on. They had a good time. And then, it must have been about 2 weeks later, they were at another a mall that they were at. And they went in and they were looking at clothing, different things, shoes as well as accessories. And she found some blouses that she thought were nice. She said, "What do you think? Would these look good on me?" And he said, "Well, yeah, these would be great." So she bought a number of blouses and skirts and handbags, and Bruce paid for it all. And again, she was very, very happy with that. Now, it was important to Rebecca to look good. She knew appearance was important. People's first impression is the appearance of somebody. And, she thought she really could improve her appearance by a little augmentation. So one time when Bruce was leaving to go to Australia, she said, "Could you just loan me your credit card while you're gone so that, if something comes up, I'll have something, if I have to buy it, you'll have a credit card." And he said, "Fine." And he gave her his credit card, and she went to a cosmetologist's implant place, and she had breast implantments. And Bruce never learned about it as far as it happening. He never checked his credit card, and he was more than happy to give it to her and let her use it. Now, another thing happened was that Bruce had an old 1973 Oldsmobile that his dad had, and he gave it to Bruce to drive. And Bruce had, for himself, he had an 87 Jeep. And that's what he drove. And they were not very attractive cars. And Rebecca didn't like that. She didn't like to go out to the restaurants or go places where people are going to see her in these old cars. And she mentioned to Bruce, I really need a decent car. And he said, "Well, fine. And they went over and he bought her a Honda Accord. And now she had a nice car, attractive car that whenever they went out, Rebecca would do the driving. She would use her new Honda Accord when they were going to a restaurant or going to the shopping centers. So that worked out very well for Rebecca. Now, it must have been about a month or several months later, she indicated that, she enjoys going to the Colorado River, as we say, to the river to go water skiing. She liked to water ski. And she said, "Boy, I wish I had a boat. I wish I had a boat I could take down to the river." And he said, "Well, fine, let's get you a boat." He buys a boat as well as a trailer for her to take down to the river. So she was happy with that. And so she did that once or twice, and she realized, her Honda, she couldn't pull a boat, a trailer. So she says, "Well, I need something to pull the boat." And Bruce says, "Okay." And then he went to a dealership, and they said, "Yeah, get a 4Runner." And he bought this 4Runner for her. So now she has 2 cars, and she has a boat and a trailer, and she's going down to the Colorado River having a good time. Now you're saying, "Okay, I understand what this is all about. I know about gold diggers and, sugar daddies and so forth. And yeah, he's getting something out of it. Well, what is Bruce getting out of all this? Well, maybe love, but it wasn't sexual love. And, he wanted to be fond with her, but she said, no, no. She was saving herself for marriage. And she said, no, I can't have sex with someone out of marriage. And that kind of upset Bruce. He thought he should be getting something out of it, but he had not dated before, didn't know what was expected in a relationship. And then he talked about marriage. Maybe we could get married. And she said, well, maybe so under certain conditions. But first, I need an engagement ring, and an expensive engagement ring. And so she took him to one of the expensive jewelers. And I think it was 7,000, or maybe it was 8,000 that they paid for this engagement ring, as well as with a wedding band. And she was proud of it. She was happy with it. It was exactly what she wanted. So things were going well for Rebecca, and she liked her life that she had with Bruce. It wasn't a sexual life. They weren't living together, sleeping together, but she wanted a house. She said, if we get married, I want a house, a nice house. And she described the house that she wanted. It was going to be one, next to a country club, on top of a hill. And she wanted something where she could do a lot of entertaining. And so they went out looking, and Bruce found a very nice house in Whittier. It was on top of a hill overlooking a country club, and the backyard was perfect for entertaining. It had a large pool, it had a barbecue, it had a changing room, it had everything. So they got it. This was what she wanted, the house that she wanted, but it had to be furnished. And she needed the best of furniture in there. And they went out to various furniture stores and they bought the best furniture to fill up the entire house. So it was very, very nice house and furnishings. Life, as we said, was very, very nice. Now, Rebecca, she knew about the community property laws, and she realized that they got married. She would get half of everything of Bruce's, especially the house. She would have half interest in it. Everything was split half if there was ever a divorce. So she needed to get her name on the title to the house. Now, how was she going to do this? Because, she doesn't want to marry him, but on the other hand, if she gets half interest, she's going to have sex with him, and she doesn't want that. Is there anything that she could do to get her name, Rebecca Salcedo, on that deed of the house? And she did. She figured out there was a way to do that. And what would that solution be? Well, they could get married at the courthouse. City Hall is where you can get married. And then later on, they could have a wedding at the church. And she said, well, let's do it. And they did it. They went to a courthouse. They got married. So they had a civil ceremony. But she kept telling Bruce, well, we can't live together because we haven't had a church wedding. And it has to be a church wedding. Now, during this period of time, Bruce would have to call up and let Rebecca know that he's coming over to visit her at their house that they own together, in both of their names. And he has to live with his parents in South Pasadena. That was their house in South Pass. So that was what went on for some time. But eventually, Bruce said, well, can't we have a church wedding? And finally she gives in and she says, okay, and they do. They have a church wedding in San Marino, and at the wedding. This is not her child, it was a cousin's child that she was carrying. And he paid for it all. It was just beautiful. What a lovely, lovely wedding they had. Invited, I don't know, there's over 200 guests. San Marino is one of the wealthiest places in Los Angeles County. And then they went to one of the country clubs, had a reception there. And what becomes important in all this is there was a wedding photographer who took the photographs of their wedding. It was a beautiful wedding and a lot of beautiful photographs of it. Now, after they got married, they went to Hawaii, Honolulu, and they spent, I don't know, not quite a week. It must have been 5 days that they lived and stayed there in Honolulu. Wonderful, wonderful time for Bruce. And now they were back home and they were living in their new house. And this is their bedroom. This is the bed that they're sleeping on together. So finally, there's a little activity, sexual activity. Didn't last long. It may have lasted about 2 months. And then she says, no, this isn't working out. And, she said, we've got to separate. We've got to separate. And so that was kind of what went on. He had to move out. He had to move back in with his parents back in South Pasadena. So that wasn't what he wanted. And he was hoping for a reconciliation. Maybe things could be worked out. Maybe there was something he was saying or doing, or maybe he wasn't giving her enough. So they decided to go to their favorite Mexican restaurant, and they went there. And it was kind of late in the evening time. They had a Mexican meal, spicy one he liked, and they had both of them. They had 2 beers. They enjoyed themselves. So afterwards, they were in the Boyle Heights area, and Rebecca said, let's go over to my uncle's place. And this is her uncle's place where he lived in Boyle Heights. And she's driving the 4Runner, her new car that Bruce has given her to pull the boat. So they drive over there and they have a number of drinks at the uncle's place. Now I put this together for the jury so that they would understand where all these events occurred. Now this is where the restaurant was, and then they drove down to the uncle's place, which was right there. And then afterwards, after they gave Bruce a number of drinks, and he was kind of drunk at that time, Rebecca leaves and drives over to a spot to the entrance to the 5 freeway. And that's where it's located. You can see there in that on the map. Now, this is the entrance to it. As I say, it's dark out. She comes up and she stops. She stops at the stop sign there because, she said there was a light that came on the dashboard indicating that there was either a door or the tailgate was ajar. So she gets out of the driver's side and she goes back to the back of the 4Runner, and she's trying to check out the back door. At that time, somebody comes and starts shooting at Bruce. And now Bruce is in that seat, the passenger seat, and he's shot. He's hit. And he opens the door and trying to run. He's trying to run away, and he runs across the street, and he got to the other side of the street, and he collapsed. He fell down, and the shooter comes up from behind him, is standing right over him, and shoots him in the back and shoots him in the head. So that's what happened to Bruce, and the police are called because the neighbors hear all these the gunshots. And when they got there, they started investigating, checking things out. And Rebecca had been right on the asphalt in the middle of the street there, right behind the 4Runner, and there's her shoes.
And she'd been knocked out. She'd been hit, knocked out. And then she noticed her engagement ring was gone. It was gone. Somebody had taken it off of her finger there. There was another ring that she was wearing, and it was found on the asphalt of the street. Somehow it had been dropped. So now it looks like it was a robbery. Somebody was trying to rob the two of them and took her wedding ring. Now, the police are checking everything out, and they're looking for latent prints, they're looking for ballistics, they're looking for any type of trace evidence they can find, and there isn't any. After they spent several hours investigating that crime scene, there's no gun that's recovered, and there's witnesses who said, well, we saw somebody run down the street, but they couldn't identify, they couldn't give a description of the person. But there was the wedding ring is missing, and when they started checking later on the different pawn shops, it doesn't show up. Nobody has turned in this engagement ring. So there's not really anything that the police have to go on. No latent prints, no DNA. Basically, they have, a murder scene with no suspects. Well, okay, what are they going to do? The detectives continue their investigation while Bruce is buried at Rose Hill Cemetery in Whittier. And it was a big funeral. A lot of friends of Bruce came to mourn his passing, and this is his tombstone. And life went on for Rebecca. I mean, it's tough. How is she going to support herself? She has this nice house, but requires maintenance, costs money. And yeah, she has that Forerunner and she has her boat and trailer, but it's expensive. Everything is expensive. Now, how is she going to pay for all of this? And she is fortunate enough that Bruce had a number of life insurance policies, and she was able to turn them in and receive benefits from those life insurance. So that tided her over, and that was, I guess you could say a godsend. Now, the detectives still trying to investigate the case. They haven't gotten any suspects. They tried to find informants. So it was about 6 months later, they decided to go back and talk to Rebecca. So they go to her house, they go in there, and she's seated there, and they say, do you know anybody who disliked Bruce? Who would want to harm him or kill him? And one of the detectives started to notice that Rebecca had a wedding ring on, had that wedding ring on that she had claimed was stolen. Now, what does that mean? Because at the crime scene, she said, her wedding ring had been taken and stolen, had been taken off her hand. Oh, this is not adding up. And I told you about the wedding photographer. Happened to go to the police and said, something strange is going on here. She says, I talked to Rebecca. I took the photographs over from the wedding for her to select the proofs that she wanted. And she made this statement to me. She said, I wouldn't be surprised if someone in my family would kill my husband. Wow, why would she say that? So she mentions that to the detectives who were investigating the case. And the detectives started thinking about, at the time, when they first started it, they went to the crime scene and she was seated over on the curb near where the Forerunner was, but she never went over to check on her husband. She never walked across the street, and she never asked any questions about how was her husband doing. She could see that he's lying there, But when she got to the police station, she talked to the detectives, and the first thing that she wanted them to know is, what do you think about my breast enhancements? Now, the detectives are thinking that's kind of strange for a wife to be talking about her breast enhancements to the detectives within about 2 hours of the time that her husband had been shot. So the detectives start checking out her cell phone, and they're wondering, well, who has she been calling? Who has she been in contact with? And they find out she has been in contact with her cousin, Alvaro. And she has called him several times right at the time that she was at that restaurant with Bruce. And when they checked it all out, they went to the different towers, the cell towers, and that's where information is transmitted from these cell towers. And they found that, she was making that phone call near the restaurant. And they got that. And then they saw that the phone number that she was calling was her cousin's. And that went to a tower within, several hundred feet of the crime scene where Bruce was killed. So now they know that she's making phone calls to the cousin just moments before the shooting. Now, they go back to that restaurant to talk to the waitresses there, and they talked to one of the waitresses and said, do you remember this woman, Rebecca Cleland, coming in, having a dinner? And they said, yeah, I remember. They'd seen her there before, and they said it was kind of strange. She kept getting up from the table and going back toward the kitchen area, making phone calls on her cell phone. And the waitress said, yeah, she did that several times, and we thought it was kind of strange what she was doing. Now, what next happened was they were trying to find out more information about Rebecca, about their relationship, her relationship with her cousins, and Alfaro. They learned that now, 6 months after Bruce's death, she's living with Alfaro. Alfaro is sleeping in her bed with her. That seemed kind of strange. Cousins sleeping together. Also, they checked out Alvaro had a brother, Jose, who had a drug problem. So now they knew that Rebecca is living with Alvaro, her cousin, and Alvaro's brother and cousin to Rebecca has a drug problem. And then the things is that the Hollenbeck station that was doing the investigation on this noticed that some things were not adding up. We've already talked about the wedding photographer. We talked about Rebecca's sister. We're going to talk about, and Bruce's family came forth with a lot of information that they had learned about Rebecca. And most of all, it was the life insurance investigator started uncovering a lot of these life insurance policies that had been taken out on Bruce's life. Now, what we do know, she kicked Bruce out of the house, and what was the reason for it? And later on, detectives found out that the reason was, and she had told this to her girlfriends, that he didn't perform well in bed. He sexually just didn't have what it took to satisfy her. So that's what they're finding out. That was the main reason that Bruce is kicked out of the house, was he's not good in bed. Now, the other thing is about entertaining. This is 6 months after Bruce's death. She would have a lot of parties there, and she had her stripper boyfriend move in with her. Now, he moved in, stayed with her, as well as Alvaro, when he was in town. So then they were checking out about that reconciliation. Now, they talked to friends of Bruce's, and he really wanted to get back together with Rebecca. He loved Rebecca, wanted to live with her. Now, this is before the shooting, and they, the friend said, "Well, wait, have you, checked this out about a divorce?" And Bruce said, "Well, no, I don't know anything about it. I know that she wants a divorce, but I want a reconciliation. I want to get back together with her." The friend said, "You should talk to a divorce attorney," and he did. And the divorce attorney said, "That divorce isn't going to cost you anything. You were only living together for 2 months, and the only thing that Rebecca gets out of that is half of your income from TRW for those 2 months. And since the house didn't go up in value, there is no gain as far as the house. No, she doesn't get the house. She doesn't get half of the house. She only gets it if the house is sold and there's a profit on that." So this is not good. And then Rebecca realizes that she didn't understand about community property. She misunderstood. She had the conception that she was going to get half of everything that Bruce owned. And that wasn't the law. So, she was very, very disappointed when she realized that she was not going to get anything from the divorce. She's not going to get a house. She's not going to get the car. She's not going to get the boat, the furniture, nothing except for those 2 months of Bruce's salary. She'd get half of that. Now, this is kind of sad for her. What is she going to do? Is she going to have to work to make a living? No, she didn't want to do that. So she had to think about what's another way of making money off of Bruce. If it wasn't going to pay off to get a divorce, which now she'd learned, she's going to go to Plan B. Plan B was get life insurance. And she went out and she did get life insurance. As a matter of fact, she, on her own, took out several life insurance policies on Bruce's life, and she made herself the beneficiary, and she was able to forge Bruce's signature on the application. So that's how she got all these life insurance policies. Well, the only thing, in order to collect, Bruce is going to have to die. This is kind of unfortunate, but that's the only way you're going to collect. Now, Rebecca had to find a hitman. Who is she going to get to kill Bruce? Well, she doesn't know any hitmen, and she contacts her sister, who works at a bail bonds office, and she said, "Hey, don't you know somebody, that comes into the bail bonds office who would be willing to kill somebody?" And the sister said, "No, I don't. I don't know anybody, and I'm not going to get anybody for you." So what is she going to do? She can't find anyone who's going to do the killing of Bruce. And it means that she's going to have to rely on her family. And remember, she has that cousin, Jose, who's got a drug problem. He always needs money. And by this time, Alvaro is in her bed, and they're living together. So what can she do? Well, what she does, and this is the plan that's worked out, she's going to take Bruce to that restaurant, the Mexican restaurant that they like, and then eventually she's going to go over to her uncle's and get Bruce drunk, and then she's going to drive the car to a very isolated area, and that's where Jose is going to jump out of the bushes there with a gun and start shooting Bruce, who's in the car. And that's exactly what he does. Shoots Bruce, and Bruce gets out of the car, runs across the street. And who's going to drive the getaway car? Well, Alvaro. He's waiting down the street, and Jose comes running to him. They drive away. Well, this is the role of each one. Rebecca, she, falls to the ground behind the forerunner, pretending that she's been hit over the head, and her wedding ring is stolen. And as far as Jose, he goes over, after shooting Bruce originally, comes over and shoots him in the back and shoots him in the head while he's lying on the driveway apron there. And then Alvaro is down the street in the car with the engine running. So that's the role of each one of the members of the family. And was it successful? Yes, it was successful. It was very successful in that she got that life insurance money without any problem at all. And she got not half the house, she got the entire house. And then she got all his property, everything that he had coming to him. Well, what does Jose get? Well, he got $500. Rebecca was very willing to pay her cousin $500. Now, she got almost $1 million out of what she was able to gain through the house and the property and the life insurance. And of course, Alvaro, he gets to stay and sleep in the bed with Rebecca. So that's what everyone got out of it. But it all crumbled. And it crumbled because the wedding photographer thought something was awry, contacted the detectives, and she tipped him off that she thought that Rebecca had her wedding ring again. Now her sister came in and testified against her and said, yeah, my sister Rebecca came and asked me to find a hitman for her. And then there was a witness who came in and testified that Jose, went and asked him for a gun, and he loaned him a gun, which was the gun that was used. And the waitress came in and said, yeah, that's the gal Rebecca. She was making phone calls on her cell phone while Bruce was eating the meal. And Alvaro, he denied having anything to do and that he wasn't in the area. Well, we have those records from the phone company showing that he was on that cell phone moments before the shooting talking to Rebecca. And Bruce's family gave a lot of information. And of course, the life insurance investigator was able to show that those policies were fraudulently obtained. Now, they were all found guilty, and they were all sentenced to life in prison. So that's what happened to the three cousins. And I wrote a book about the gold digger, and it was called The Honeymoon with a Killer. I wrote it with my friend Don Lasseter, a famous true crime author, and it lays out all the information about what Rebecca did to kill Bruce, who was so giving. Yes, he was naive, but he had never dated. He didn't know anything about women or how women could manipulate him. So if you want more details, my book is out there. And hopefully you will join us again for another True Crime Files of Los Angeles by Ronald E. Bowers. See you then.